Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. You may have heard about the attempted arson attack against the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Atlanta, Georgia. A 26-year-old woman is now facing a slew of charges in connection with that purported attack. Video reportedly shows Lanisha Chantrice Henderson dousing the historic property, which is now operated by the National Park Service, with gasoline. Authorities say if bystanders, including 2 off-duty cops, hadn't jumped in and held down the suspect until cops arrived, the historic property would have been engulfed in flames and possibly destroyed. Now, as for motive, all we know is the suspect claims to be a veteran struggling with mental health issues. However, some conservatives are wondering how this would have been reported on had the suspect been successful in starting a fire, especially one that left the entire birthplace of Martin Luther King Jr. a heap of ashes. With the fact that the suspect is a black woman have been buried so that the headlines, which are what most people read anyway, would leave the public with the idea that this was some kind of white supremacist hate attack and harbinger of things to come should the scary orange man win next year. We all know what lengths Deadspin went to in order to racially abuse a 9-year-old Kansas City Chiefs fan for wearing his team's colors as face paint, so it's entirely likely. The point here is how easily manipulated our memories or our perceptions of events can be. But think for a moment that if our memories or perceptions of current events could be so distorted in the minds of those who live through them, imagine how that affects our understandings of past historical events. Our next guest tonight is launching a history podcast to help right that ship. Joining us now to discuss is Jarrett Stepman, a columnist for the Daily Signal and the co-host of the new History Reconsidered podcast. Jarrett, thanks for being here tonight.
It's great to be with you.
Great. So you co-host along with Dr. Sumantra Mitra, a friend of this show. First, talk to us about the aims of your new podcast. What about history do you wish the audience to reconsider?
Yeah, we think history is too important to leave to academia. We think that the new ideological trends within academia have made it difficult for them to discuss for a popular general audience serious issues in history. We think that there's, unfortunately, in modern times, a lack of real depth and understanding of the past that's essential for us to understand how we're going to go forward. Unfortunately, in our institutions today, we're too busy destroying the past than learning from it. And so our aims with this podcast are really to revive an interest in history, a real understanding of what's happened in the past and many of the great figures who I think we can still learn from today in the 21st century.
No, that is so important. As you talk about academia, I want to pick your brain a little bit more on that because I don't know, I'm not sure if you know, but maybe it's been almost 2 years ago at this point. I'm a little fuzzy on the date. Maybe it was early 2022, so maybe not so much. But either way, I had a little Twitter spat, I guess you could say, with Kara Cooney. She's an Egyptologist. And, you know, for anyone who knows me, I always want to grow up being an Egyptologist. Specifically, I want to go to UCLA, learn Arabic, and become an Egyptologist and go to Egypt and do the whole thing, right? Well, Dr. Kara Cooney, she's, you know, a little bit younger. She's an Egyptologist. She's at UCLA. I believe she's the chair there. And so I thought, wow, she's kind of like what I could have been if my life had taken a different route. And so I was kind of, you know, I had an appreciation. I knew she was a little more feminist, a little more liberal in her politics, but you know, we try and separate that from the work, right? Well, like you're saying with academia, the lines have gotten so blurred. I picked up her more recent book, I think it's called The Good Kings, and the whole thing was her saying that ancient Egyptian history is like an abusive boyfriend and she needs to break up with him because she's been under a spell for too long, but only now she realizes how evil he is because, I don't know, I guess Egyptology is not nice to women or just all these things she was using are, you know, especially the 2020 type wokeness and that kind of lingo, and then using that to look back on ancient Egyptians. And as I called out to her on Twitter, I mean, she's putting words and ideas into the mouths of people who died thousands of years ago, of whom we don't really have a lot of personal writings. It's not like you can read their journal and know anything about them. And she's saying, oh yeah, that guy, misogynist, racist, xenophobe, this, that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course, then in the ending chapter, she talks about current events, and here, rewriting history as we live through it, says that Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 black men, killing 2 for this great white race war, glorious race war he was waging. I was so shocked. Of course, that was the main part that I put on Twitter because that was fact check, so easy. And no, it was white men, but whatever. That's not even the point. But talk to me a little bit about the academia because that, I mean, all the ideas that I had of looking up to her, I mean, it dissipated so fast because it made me think if she doesn't know what's going on right now in any great degree, how can I trust her on something that happened 5,000 years ago?